Blog Talk Radio.
Namaste, everybody. Welcome to Nature of Reality Radio. It is May 14th, 2014. I am your host, Andrew Fisher, broadcasting every Wednesday from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, exposing the true and false nature of reality for what it is and what it isn't. And today we are scheduled to have Elizabeth Mulligan on the show. She's the host of the Diamonds Forever show, which I myself have been a guest on a couple of occasions. I first met Elizabeth at the In5D Return to Atlantis conference in Sarasota, and I asked her if she wanted if I could put a picture of her up on my Blog Talk Radio front page, and she said, "I think it's better if you put a diamond." She seems to love diamonds so much. I'd like to talk to her about that and see what's so special about diamonds, other than they're the hardest rock on planet Earth. There's got to be some other special things about diamonds. I think we'll be talking about that and other things. And being a radio show host goes without saying that one of the best guests a radio show host can have on their show is another radio show host, because all those guests that we've listened to, all those times that we've hosted shows, and all the fascinating individuals we've heard from as guests, that makes us experts. Don't mean to brag or anything, but if you've been around people who cover a whole slew of subjects, that you're a perfect candidate to be a guest on any show that wants to get information out. That's why I always say I'd like to have people like Alex Jones and George Norrie on my show at some point. Did send them a request they come on my show. Even asked Alex Jones and George in person at the JFK 50th anniversary protest, where I asked Alex and George at the In5D City of Angels conference, but I guess they are too busy to come on someone else's show. Certainly not a celebrity radio show host like me. Just a regular run-of-the-mill Blog Talk radio show host isn't good enough for them. What the hell. I still love them. I love them very much, and I'm sure I'm going to love this interview with Elizabeth. But as usual, we're going to spend some time talking about the news, no later than 6:10 Eastern. I'll try to end the news, but someone's calling me. I wonder if this is Elizabeth. It probably is. Hang on a second. Hello? Oh, it is you. I can hear myself in the background. Hey, Elizabeth, are you going to call on the show? Yeah, the call-in number is 646-478-4747. All right, got that number? Bye. All right, bye. Okay, well, I don't see that every day when you're hosting a show, but second guest in a row I've had to contact on my cell phone. First, Andrew Bashago a couple weeks ago, because somehow he lost track of the time and didn't come on my show at 10 after the hour like I asked him to. I had to call him, and now Elizabeth calls me, thinking for some reason this was the number. But, all right, I got to get started in the news here. First article on Infowars.com, New Mexico State Rep. Don't vote for white candidates. Rep says that unsuspecting Democratic leaders are supporting Anglo-Democrats with egos as big as Texas. Well, who said Texas has a bigger ego than anybody else? I know they're number one in death penalty punishment in terms of all the states of the union, but I don't really have time to look into this. But saying don't vote for white candidates, did he actually say that, or is he saying unsuspecting Democratic leaders? Well, that's in quotes, unsuspecting Democratic leaders. I don't know how that implies white candidates, but anyway, something to be considered there. I hope we don't have representatives being racist. All right, next article. Scientists, robots could be programmed to kill you for the greater good. Autonomous vehicles present morally dangerous path. Well, the power elites would like to replace humans with machines, and more specifically turn humans into machines. One of the biggest misconceptions among truth movements is that all of the powers that be, all the factions within the powers that be want to depopulate the earth. Horse pucky, that's not the case at all. In fact, I don't know how much of the majority don't want to do that, but I believe I've heard from a couple sources that the majority of the powers that be do not want to depopulate the earth, but I'm sure that the minority that do make up a very high percentage. It's probably like 45% do. There is a lot of infighting in the powers that be, but the point is, this is according to Andrew Bartzis, by the way. He claimed that the real goal of the powers that be is to create a galactic war machine. Keep in mind that the Draco Reptilians, they are a warrior that travels around the universe, just like the Galactic Empire from Star Wars, which no doubt is a in-your-face form of Hollywood propaganda, the Galactic Empire representing the Draconian Empire, and Darth Maul looks like a certain species of reptile alien, as so says Credo Motwa, the Zulu shaman. But the whole point is the powers that be, their main goal is to create a war machine by taking away the free will of humans to make us think that we need to use free will for malevolent purposes, and they want to turn us into malevolent free will quests to conquer the galactic universe and create a universal empire using humans as pawns and warriors in that. And I'm sure the microchip global population plot has something to do with this, which is why they want to microchip us. It's part of the plot to War Machine. And the powers that be that do want to depopulate the Earth, I wonder how much fighting they do with the powers that be that don't want to depopulate the Earth. Interesting thing worth considering. But next article, student fights back after suspension over pro-gun T-shirt. School claims shirt is unsafe and disruptive. How can something that supports the Second Amendment, which is arguably the most important right ever, the right to bear arms, the right to self-defense, Founding Fathers put that in the Constitution so we could protect ourselves from tyrannical government, mind you, and this student gets suspended for it. Well, it's against the school dress code. Well, as I discussed in my interview with Rule of Law radio show host Eddie Craig, a school or any government agency does not have the right to take away students' rights just because students are minors. The idea that minors have fewer rights than adults is horsepucky. Now, granted, the parents do have some leeway in taking away the rights of their children because the totality of the circumstances requires that in order for a child to develop, they need to have rights taken away. Otherwise, they could not develop and function in this society. But the important thing is a school cannot violate the rights of a student unless that student's specific parents say that it's okay for the school to violate the student's rights. And I'll be talking about this with Catherine Albrecht next week, who's a big brother hater she is. She's tried to fight for students' rights, and they basically told her minors have fewer rights than adults. Schools reserve the right to take away the rights of kids, and this is just a classic example of that. We need the Second Amendment to protect ourselves from tyrannical government because we lose that, we lose everything, and this student was doing the right thing by wearing a pro-gun T-shirt. All right, next article. Russian foreign minister demands Obama reply to claim U.S. mercenaries in Ukraine. Academi denies its mercenaries are helping junta in Kiev eliminate opposition. Well, it's been talked about on another note that Joe Biden's son, I believe it was, has been put in charge of a prominent position in the Ukraine. Is it a bank? I'm not so sure. Something tells you it was a bank that he was put in charge of. That's all the more confirmation that the United States is the Roman Empire, the modern era, when the vice president's son gets put in charge of something in a country that just had a revolution in which Russia gets to expand its empire. But as far as this thing about U.S. mercenaries in Ukraine, it's best that U.S. mercenaries and the U.S. in general stay out of the Ukraine. Founding Fathers did not want us to be the Roman Empire of the modern era. All right, next article. Second Amendment, clear and present danger in Illinois. Clear and present danger, that's in quotes, in Illinois. Concealed carry law allows doctors to make call on gun ownership. Well, the Second Amendment, it's a right, not a privilege. You do not need a permit. You do not need a license to have a gun, and any law that says you do is a law the government does not have authority to pass. I mean, Illinois, I know they're very strict on on people filming the police. You film the police in Illinois, you are more likely to get arrested for doing it than any other state. There is no reasonable expectation of privacy in public. I repeat, there is no reasonable expectation of privacy in public. It's okay to film people in public because they're in public. That's why it's okay for you to film the police and people in government in public. But if you film the police in Illinois, you're going to get arrested. And now this whole thing about the Second Amendment being of clear and present danger in Illinois, all the more demonization of the right to bear arms to take our guns to inflict tyranny. All right, our next article. Mainstream media pushes doomsday Arctic ice sheet propaganda. Global warming is a hoax. Can you believe the mainstream media still thinks that we're stupid enough to buy it? Well, there are some sheeple who are stupid enough to buy it, no offense intended, but it's funny how Bill Nye the Science Guy once confused the Arctic with the Antarctic. That guy is just an actor who plays a science expert on a show. He's not actually a science expert. Loved watching his show when I was a kid, but now I know he's a fraud. I don't know if he's a globalist hatchet man, but he's just an actor who plays a science guy. I remember that when he confused the Arctic with the Antarctic. All right, two more articles before I get Elizabeth on. De-dollarization. Russia is on the verge of dealing a massive blow to the petrodollar. Is the petrodollar monopoly about to be shattered? Well, look, you can say what you want about whether a collapse of the dollar, which is the global reserve currency, would be good or bad for the world. Maybe we need a currency reset. I've been paying attention to Sheldon Idle of the Galactic Federation. I get weekly emails from him giving an update. He's very big on talking about how the extraterrestrials who are in contact with him say that they're going to try to get a gold-backed currency on planet Earth, and they're trying to defeat the powers that be to do that. And this whole thing about petrodollar, that we have technology, extraterrestrial technology, mind you, that could put oil out of business. That's why I'm so against fracking, one of the main reasons. All right, one more story before I get Elizabeth on. Court upholds warrantless entry seizure of gun rights activists. Milwaukee police forced their way into a gun rights advocate's home without a warrant and literally kidnapped a woman for an emergency mental evaluation, and the court upholds this. No doubt this should be on the InfoWars Nightly News because it's clear tyranny. I'll definitely check the InfoWars Nightly News out tonight to see what happened there. Oh, I see I have a bunch of guests in the chat room, more so than usual. I guess Elizabeth has been telling people that she is going to be a guest on my show, but this area code 612, I believe that is her. First thing I'm going to do when I let her on, plug her show. It seems like the appropriate thing to do. So, area code 612, is this Elizabeth Mulligan?
It's Elizabeth Diamond, Andrew Fisher. Yes, it is. Thank you.
How you doing? Okay, wait a minute. I don't think I even know your real name. Is your real name Elizabeth Mulligan or Elizabeth Diamond?
I go by Elizabeth Diamond, Andrew. You're blowing my cover.
Well, your real name, apparently, Elizabeth Mulligan, is the one you use on Facebook, so I don't know how you can accuse me of blowing your cover when you put it out in public.
It is.
I thought so. Okay, well, I think the appropriate thing to do, since I have you on now, is to give you the opportunity to plug your radio show. By all means, plug your show. Tell us both show, the news show and the one that you've had me on Saturdays on a couple of occasions.
Oh, okay. Well, the Diamonds with an S Forever 31.blogspot.com is a blog where I blog, the world changes, and my heart, is, like Andrew's, is to help and keep us awakening and no stop. Let's awaken and go beyond galactic-wise. So that, and then I do a news show, 30-minute news show on Thursdays at 7 p.m. On the Diamonds Forever line, which is 209-255-1000. You can dial by Skype if you have Skype to landline credits, or you can dial by phone. And the PIN number is 883267#. And then there's recordings you can listen to. If you go to the blog spot, you'll see all that information. And then Saturdays we do an extended call, learning who we really are, awakening, and we go beyond awakening there on that call, Saturdays at 1 p.m. Central. So how's that, Andrew?
Oh, it sounds great. I haven't yet listened to one of your news shows, but I have in the archives on one of the websites where you archive shows, listened to some other interviews that you've done. The one with Franco De Nicola was awesome. I also, even though you didn't interview Teal Scott, I listened, or Teal Swan, I should say, she got married, and that recording you did with her getting interviewed by someone else, that was very informative, and I enjoyed being on your show. Great having another radio show host on your show, because we're very knowledgeable people from what we listen to. But I guess I might as well start with this whole thing about your obsession with diamonds. What do you see about diamonds other than the fact that they are the hardest rock on planet Earth?
You're funny, Andrew. First of all, I want to just let you know, Andrew, I found your two shows that you were on, the Diamonds, and I sent those two links to you on Facebook message, so maybe you want to put that in your blog talk link or whatever, so everybody can hear all of your knowledge you gave on the Diamonds call. The first one we did was back in February. Do you believe it? Time flies, huh?
Yes, it does. Because we're very spiritual. Yeah. Time is speeding up. Or actually, no, that's a misnomer. Time is not speeding up. It's just being compressed. We just perceive it as speeding up. But I'm digressing. Anyway, get back to why you're so obsessed with diamonds.
Obsessed with diamonds. Oh, goodness. Well, it all started when I was on conference calls myself, and we'll go back when I bought the Iraqi dinar, and then I found a conference call, and I went on a conference call where they were talking about the world, the bad guys, good guys, 9/11, and way beyond that. And then my journey started there. And then I was on conference calls, spiritual calls, never been on these conference calls before. Anyway, a time came where everybody said, you should do your own show, Elizabeth, blah, blah, blah. No. But I got spurred in my heart as time went by, and I sat down and I took my time. I asked the universe, okay, what should I see? It's not my obsession. It must be the universe's obsession with diamonds. What should I call this call? And I got Diamonds Forever, and then we had to have 31 to open up the email on Blogspot. So Diamonds 31 and 13 is the mirror of 31, means, Christ consciousness warrior. And diamonds are literally who we are. And let me just give you a little bit of snoop on diamonds. It's a very awesome concept. It's kind of like the story the story of a diamond, of kind of what we're playing out now. Okay, so diamonds are the stones. It's the stone before it becomes the beautiful diamond is coal. There's coal covered this stone. Coal is the stone before it becomes a beautiful diamond gem we see in stores, right? And right. A diamond is a very precious stone, usually colorless, formed of pure carbon. It is the hardest known material. Historically, diamonds were found in riverbeds. Then later they were found deep in the earth in rock formation. They are found as rough stones and then processed to create a sparkling gem that is ready for purchase. So that's the story of us, you guys. I get it. We're changing. We're awakening. We're the hardest stones when we're fully awake. We'll be able to go galactic-wise and help others awake and help others see what we've experienced, so much oppression here on Earth right now. So, and they're the hardest gems. Rub two diamonds together like Andrew Fisher, Elizabeth Diamond, and we sparkle each other. I guess I'll put it that way. They're hard to break. You cannot break diamonds. And they sharpen people. We sharpen people. So what do you think about that, Andrew?
Very interesting indeed. My April month that's my birthstone, the diamond, as a matter of fact, is my birthstone. Not that makes me any more or less special than any other person born on any other day. The fact that diamonds are the hardest rock doesn't really make any difference in that regard, I don't think. But anyway, you said something interesting there. Something about 31 being Christ consciousness. Can you elaborate on that, the significance behind the number 31? And, talk about that specifically, the number. Well,
I learned this from Kata Gaia. 31, and other people, it probably means many things. 31 is either like a spiritual warrior, and 13, the mirror of 31, is Christ consciousness. It's just speaking of who we really are. We're a piece of God source, right? And we're naturally supernatural, and that's what we'll discover and remember who we really are. We're like I like to say, superheroes for God, superheroes. And all that, we look at it as miracles, and superheroism on TV is really real. That's really us, But we're learning now in this oppressive world, kind of what we chose to come into. We're learning how to be good, really good superheroes, for the good side and not the bad.
Right.
Love and peace.
But yeah, in regards to Christ consciousness, this term seems to get thrown out in all the wrong ways and also all the right ways. I mean, simply because the word Christ is there, and many people who are spiritual equate Christianity with consciousness suppressing brainwashing. And
right.
On this, there's this YouTube channel, Audio Entrainment, which has meditation videos that I often use. And one of the meditation videos is Christ consciousness. And the video description, they talk about how they were like, please do not claim that we use this to claim we support Christ. This is not what we're about. We just want to give this term some meaning, so we're putting this meditation here. It's like they were trying to be really cautious with it because they thought it would be really controversial that they put something called Christ consciousness on their page. So could you elaborate on what Christ consciousness is, and why the hell would you use the word Christ if Christianity is a religion which suppresses your consciousness?
Which all religions are. In all religions, they broke up source or God, the concept of it, and broke them up into religions, all religions, and there's truth in there because they had to leave truth in there, so we would be subtly deceived. And then there's lies and confusion in each religion, if you ask me. Right. So we should rename this Christ consciousness word. Yeah. So, but to me, I come from Christianity, so studied the Bible and Jesus and Holy Spirit and God, and he taught Christ consciousness. I'll put it that way. But you got a good point, Andrew.
Yes.
I would just I would go back to our DNA. We have 3 strands on now. We actually have 12 strands of DNA, and all 12 strands, when they're turned on, which is happening now in the process, will be those naturally superheroes for ourselves and humanity and beyond, and not be stuck in planet Earth and be able to go galactic-wise and multi-universal-wise. What do you think? Yeah. What would we rename it, Andrew, huh? What are some ideas?
Oh, well, Laura Eisenhower has talked about how Christ consciousness would be highest source consciousness, and I guess she is trying to acknowledge there secretly that the word Christ is a misnomer because it's not at least the highest level of male energy source, I should say, because Christ equates with the sun, and the sun is equated with male energy, and it would be the highest source of male energy power, I guess, but even she would acknowledge that it would be a mistake to call it Christ consciousness. But interestingly, I was watching those interviews that Andrew Barsis had come out with Veronica Keene, and they talked about how Jesus and also some other religious figures, they weren't human, but they were solar. Well, in the case of Jesus, he was a solar being, which makes sense because astrologically there's so much connections with the sun. It's incredible. Sun going across the zodiac and whatnot. But he talked about how Jesus and religious figures were incarnated from like the sun or some other star in another constellation or star system, and they incarnated here on Earth to change the consciousness or increase the consciousness, not just change it. But now that you've heard me say that Christ did exist in this reality, he was a solar being, as were some other religious figures who were not necessarily solar or something else. As someone who's grew up as a Christian and is not really Christian anymore, what do you have to say about this idea?
Oh my goodness! Wow, yeah, probably 4 or 5 years ago or less. I was heavily into the programs. Now I know they're programs inside of our body, inside of our mind, inside of our thinking, our thoughts even, and our belief system. Our own, each of our unique belief systems that we attain through our life. Wow, it's been a journey. And when I found some of those truths out, it's like, no way, how could that be? I almost didn't believe it, right? But I kept my heart open and said, okay. I actually went and had a talk with God. Okay, God, if they're saying this, and okay, one of the ones I remember, a guy, because I kept pressing him, he told me, Elizabeth, Jesus was married. Huh? What? On the inside of me, I could feel it churning. I said, this guy is weird. He's crazy, man. I don't know. But I kept my heart open, and I kept asking out loud, okay, if this is true, then help me understand it. And I kept having these talks with myself or God out loud through that eye-opening. But interesting enough, I would go warrior, all-night prayer a lot, which is good, and I got lots of healing and lots of, we'll call it deliverance, too. And I could feel freedom. So that was a journey within the religion, I'm saying. There was healing for me and a healing for everybody. But as we keep our hearts open and want to learn more, because we're limitless and we're never going to learn everything, our knowledge we know is always going to be pliable and changing. So within even that religion, I was healed. And so then as we go and journey and keep our hearts open, it's a journey and a process. We go, I'll just say we go up steps more and more and more. The knowledge bank opens up more and more, deeper. If you want more, you'll get more. So, one day at church, a conference. They prayed for everybody. We went up front, lay hands on, fall over in the Holy Ghost, which literally is tangible. You can feel joy and love. So there's truth in there. Anyway, they prophesied and told me, I see you in a box, that somebody's got you boxed in. And, and literally I just pretended like I was a jack in a box, and I jumped out of the box. and that's my journey out of the religion of Christianity that has lots of deception in it, too, and brainwashing to keep us in guilt, shame, and whatever the other, keep us from awakening. So, yeah. So what I'm saying is,
Yeah, the thing about, I just want to get back to what I said for a moment. Frankly, I don't really know if anybody knows what Christ consciousness actually is, because not to confuse what Laura Eisenhower said, I was mistaken when I made it seem like she said it's the highest source of the male energy, and I got that from the idea that the sun represents the male energy. No, I believe she said it was actually the highest source of the combination of the male and female energies. But yet one would say, no, what she's talking about, what is she talking about? Because Christ equals the sun equals male energy. It's not, there's nothing female about it in terms of metaphysics. So even the people on the audio entrainment site that I meditate with on the Christ consciousness video description, they seem to make it clear that they had no idea what the term Christ consciousness actually is. So, although it does make kind of sense that if you believe as above, so below, as the astrological saying goes, then even though you can show that the story of Jesus is just an astrological metaphor for the sun going across the zodiac, you would think, well, there has to be something like that. That's the above, so there has to be a smaller below somewhere on Earth that would represent that, and that was probably the solar being that Andrew Bartz has said was Jesus, that did actually exist, an incarnation from the sun. Well, Andrew Bartz, I'm sure if you asked him Jesus-specific questions, he probably wouldn't want to answer it, because it would probably go against his sacred neutral philosophy to talk about Jesus, because it's religious, and religions do not tolerate
this goes with everybody. Everybody has their own perspective, because they lived in different ways of life. They're different religions. So, and we learn from that. Each of us are unique. This is why you've heard, Andrew, that they said, these changes are a process, and they're not going to be the same. These energies coming in to change us, to turn our DNA on, they're not going to be, our awakening is not going to be the same for everybody. Everybody's going to experience some way a different way. So to me, Christ consciousness is just actually our awakening, and yeah. So, but I agree with you. Maybe we could find a different name, because it has it connected like a brainwashing mechanism, a program, so it's neutral, and it's all oneness, source oneness or something like that. And by the way, you mentioned Laura and Dr. Dream, Laura Eisenhower. They're going to be on the Diamonds call on Saturday, so awesome. Oh,
you're going to get them on, yeah, because I think you called me recently saying something about how you wanted to get them on, but they couldn't do it, so you were thinking about having them come on my show, but my show normally airs on Wednesday, and I already had Laura and Dr. Dream on my show at some point in the past. That was a pretty informative interview. Only time I had a couple on a show to date. All the other times it was either myself or just one guest, but I guess we might as well talk, since you mentioned awakening. You have a 30-minute news show. Now, I think news is very important. That's why every single show I spend the first 5 to 10 minutes covering news. I always use InfoWars. I'm a big fan of Alex Jones, his patriotic attitude and his in-your-face mentality, and call it fear-mongering or whatever. I happen to like it, and I think it's a great way to overcome your fears and whatnot. And his patriotic attitude still resonates with me. Just bought tickets to a conference in Virginia that'll be happening the weekend of September 18th to the 20th in Alexandria, Virginia, where Ron Paul, who should be our president but isn't because he was victimized by massive voter fraud in the Republican primary, he's going to be a speaker there, and I hope a lot of people are going to want to go to that too. Make sure you buy your tickets soon, because June 1st the price goes up. But that's the patriot in me there. I think patriotism is very important for Americans, specifically to revert back to 1776 and what the Founding Fathers stood for, because that could be a stepping stone to waking up to other things. And in regards to news, when I cover news, I like to cover conspiratorial stuff and patriot material stuff, because I believe that is where the rubber meets the road in terms of the sheeple and the people who are really spiritual. At opposite ends of the spectrum, somewhere in the middle where the rubber meets the road, you got the patriot and the conspiracy communities. And that's why I feel that when I cover news, those are the things that should specifically be covered, and that's why I use InfoWars as my source. But when you cover news, Elizabeth, what do you cover? Because I've never listened to one of your 30-minute news shows, and what kind of news do you think is most important for the world to know about?
Wow, excellent subject to bring up, Andrew, because I've heard you do your news 2 or 3 or 4 times, and I like how you do your news. You take that, and I'm glad you described why you do your news, and your heart was led to do it that way. The same for Awakening, because there's different audiences, Awakening, and that's how you can, yes. So the same kind of idea like you just explained for the Diamonds News. It started when there was a lot of changes going on, and, you know, it almost seemed, because I told you about Iraqi dinar and the financial stuff, it almost seemed that it was about ready, you know, to change the financial system, reset, as they say. So we started the news. I bring in the mainstream media news, the propaganda mainstream media news, and because I'm able now to see and twist it in a good way around and let people know and understand the undertoning of what those mainstream propaganda news shows may be about. And also I bring in world changes of encouragement of the positive things going on. You know, some states are taking out GMO foods and making them be on the labels, and some states are bringing in hemp or cannabis as medical medicines in their state, and even worldwide stuff I do. So that's why I do the news, to help and then put some financial changes in there. Because like I said, when I started there, I was on calls with thousands of people that are on the financial reset, just sitting there waiting, you know, financial reset. And I'm with Andrew, too, where he says, you know, we have to stand up, you know, and declare out loud with our words that we unplug from this system. You got to know you're in that first, you know. And I just did a blog today. I was going to tell you about that. So the news, I think I
covered everything pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've heard you make reference to this a few times. I have to plead ignorance on this. This whole thing about the Iraqi dinar, you've made reference to that like 3 times already. Look, as far as I'm concerned with currency, they want to collapse the dollar and all the other currencies so they can impose a global electronic currency for which there are fundamental implications for freedom, because you don't have a backup plan if your electronic currency doesn't work, can't use cash. That's, as far as I'm concerned, is the most important thing to talk about with currency. I'm not really in on all these little bits and pieces, but since you've mentioned the Iraqi dinar so much, can you enlighten me and everybody else on why you make reference to that so much, why it's so significant?
Wow, that's what started on my journey of awakening. I mean, big-time awakening. I didn't know anything about good guys. I was getting prepped a little bit about the bad guys because I stumbled on this site. Do you know it? What is it? Oh, gosh. He's an old guy. He ran for president in the 70s. LaRouche Pack. You probably know him, being a patriot. He has a young people following, and they do this beautiful website, and he teaches a true history of America and all that. Anyway, so when I bought the Iraqi dinar, and I'm not an investor, you know, things don't happen by accident. So it was the universe bringing me into my awakening, I believe, because I must have decided I wanted to wake early, just like Andrew and others, too. And so I learned that there's going to be a financial reset, and the Iraqi dinar, you know, it's worth, right now, it's worth, let's see, it's worth a lot if it revalues to $3 and you buy it, just say 1,000 Iraqi dinar. It'd be, if you buy 1 million Iraqi dinar for like $800 now, and it resets in a financial reset, and it goes back to what it was before the war, $3 and something, you'd be like $3 million in there, you know. So that's what that is, and you know, and I believe there are good guys the Nasera and the Farms claims. The Farms claims are true. There is a group of good guys. There's proof too, and Kennedy was one of the good guys, right? He won. That's why he got murdered. And so I believe they're doing. But I'm so much awakened now. It's like I don't know exactly how it's going to happen. Is it going to happen like Nasera's debit card, credit card free, student loan free, mortgage free, debt free? You don't have to pay it because it is treason, and it is. That's true. It is treason. And they say, the money system's going to collapse, which is a Federal Reserve dollar treason, too, and then we'll bring up the new system. And Andrew has a different take on it, so it's like I've been back and forth on it, Andrew. I don't know how it's going to go, but somehow, some way, whichever way it goes, we're all going to be prosperous because we already are prosperous. The money system was put in to limit us, and that was in Franco Di Nicolo's call a couple calls back.
Yeah, I listened to one of the interviews you did with Franco. Didn't listen to the most recent one. Very intriguing and intelligent guy. Had him on my show. He does have a lot of special skills and whatnot. But in regards to your guests, what kind of guests on your radio show do you like to get on the most? And in terms of the material they discuss, which material do you think is the most significant and most important to have humanity listen to? You don't have to spend a half hour or an hour or whatever talking about this. Just briefly touch on this, some of the bits and pieces, and then things will come to me to ask you about specifically.
Yeah. Well, I like variety, but as Andrew Bartzis talks, everything is multidimensional. We are even multidimensional beings. So I'm very detailed and specific. So I like to paint a picture with, like the shows you do, the shows I do, of a totality, a whole picture. So, one of the big ones is our brothers and sisters, ET, UFO, aliens, them, and our spirituality, quantum physics, our awakening spiritually, our DNA awakening. I just like to bring in people that will help us to awaken to who we really are and remembering that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. In regards to UFOs and aliens, it seems like a couple times in conversation we talked about ET contactees such as Tanath, the Silver Legion, and I think you talked a lot about Comet Ison back in the day when Comet Ison was in the news and was taking all the different meanings that it took up. And I remember I was talking about how Tolek, Tanath, and Sunfire, those three ET contactees, could not agree on whether Comet Ison belonged to malevolent or benevolent extraterrestrials. But have you spoken to people who are involved with ET contacts? And if you have, what have you learned that you want to share with us?
Well, regarding Tolek, Tanath, and what you just said with Comet Ison, what I found, I didn't literally have anybody on the show, but what I found was a audio video that some men did. I think they're from London or the UK. It's on the blog. If you just put in the search bar, Comet Ison. They agreed, some with Tolek and Cobra, they mentioned them. And they painted an awesome picture of what Comet Ison really is. It's a comet, but there was a ship attached to it in the back, which the ship helped to bring in. Long story, you'd have to listen to it, but it helped to bring in the energies of our full awakening. So I've had the UFO twins on, who one of the sisters of the UFO twins has had many contacts with brothers and sisters. She's been up to the ships, and they've come to her. Oh, gosh. Andrew, I'm drawing a blank. I've talked to a lot of people regarding that. I've played a lot of audios with Julian Wells and the Andrew Bartzis, the Galactic Historian calls and Q&A with the Palladians. Those are awesome. Yeah.
The Palladians.
So mostly, Yeah, mostly the ET.
Keep talking.
Mostly what I like to do with our brothers and sisters is paint them as positive. You know, we've been taught a lot when you first waken into that realm. Oh, bad, negative, right? They do bad things. But I want to paint the other side of it, which is they're just like us. We got bad people and with negative attitudes and other people with positive attitudes here on Earth. So.
Yeah, you mentioned the Pleiadians. They seem to come up in conversation a lot. They're trying to protect us from reptilians, among other things, and most people are familiar with the story of Billy Meyer, who keeps in contact with Pleiadians. And there's also the idea that Jesus was somewhat Pleiadian. Well, the idea behind that is that there was a guy named Emmanuel whose father was begotten by a Pleiadian extraterrestrial, and his mother, Emmanuel's mother, was an earth woman named Mary, and the story of Jesus, well, the teachings of Jesus specifically, is a fictionalized version of the story of the Emmanuel that Billy Meyer said did exist during the time of Jesus. That's the idea that Jesus is Pleiadian, but the Pleiadians seem to be, for the most part, on our side. There are a few malevolent ones here and there. I've heard Alex Collier mention that. But since you made reference to the Pleiadians, what do you know about them that you think is something that humanity should know about?
I don't know much about the Pleiadians, but I know a little about Arcturians because, Teal Scott, and listen to her a lot, and she's in contact with the Pleiadians. She actually is a soul fork of Pleiadian, and we actually are all mixed. We have all ET. The more you study in our, we'll just say aliens or UFOs, the more you study and the more you go down that rabbit hole, the more your heart and consciousness will expand, and you will see they're just people like us. To put it in that word, they're just a different, what we know in a word, different races, different, like we have different cultures on Earth. They're just different cultures, and they have different, things, and it makes you feel like they're really brothers and sisters, if that makks sense.
Yeah, well, you said you're familiar with Arcturians. I guess we might as well talk about that for a bit. One of the shows I did with by myself not that long ago was called The Who, What, When, Where, Why, and How of Aliens, and I'm sure I talked about Arcturians in there. I was using that article on in5d.com, which was called Characteristics of ET Races, as a guide on that show. But Teal Scott, Larry Bazell, when I had him on my show, he talked about how he believes Teal Scott is extraterrestrial, and you seem to be asserting that. So if she is, can you explain how? I mean, she's a very fascinating individual. I use her artwork as my avatars, and love to talk.
Yeah, what does that artwork mean, by the way, the one that you have up on your Facebook? I was wondering that.
Well, actually, the one on my Facebook is for empowerment. I'm not exactly sure what all the other ones are, but I know that one is empowerment, and I do have one for Nature of Reality Radio logo as well that I use. But that artwork will resonate energy throughout consciousness, so stick it everywhere. It will make everybody feel better. That's the idea there. But getting back to Arcturians, Larry Bazell says Teal Scott is extraterrestrial. She's Arcturian. You back that up. But this isn't really about Teal Scott. You can maybe touch on that for just a moment here. But in general, the Arcturian alien race, what do you know about them? Because you say you know about them.
Okay, Arcturians, and then also I've had Vivian Chevet on the show. She's Arcturian too. She calls herself Arcturian hybrid. Arcturian hybrid means that and she tells the story that her one of her, I can't remember now, either her mother or her father is Arcturian. Literally, it came from Arcturia, and they got pregnant. Full story she tells it on the show. And then with Teal Scott, she tells her story too on one of her YouTubes, or one of her many videos she has on YouTube. How she's a soul fork of an Arcturian.
What is
and that's
that?
kind of like
Soul fork. What's that?
Soul, S-O-U-L, fork. It's kind of like I can't remember how she said it. It has to do with how you split yourself up, because we're multidimensional beings. The quantum physics science of it. So, yeah. And it's deep how to explain it like Andrew talks sometimes, Yeah. So you'd have to go find that on YouTube with her.
Right. Do you know what the Arcturians are specifically trying to do in regards to their mission on planet Earth, operating at a level that involves helping humanity but not getting involved at going by the law of free will and not getting involved unless we either ask them for help or if the situation is dire? What are they doing here on Earth?
Well, Arcturians like Vivian, and they have high vibrations of love and healing. You can feel that with Teal, and you can feel it with Vivian. But with all races, like you just said, you touched on it. David Wilcock just had a half-an-hour show on just talking what we're talking now on free will here on Earth on Gaiam TV. Those shows are really cool. Andrew should check them out. But with all the races, they're all helping us. But they can't help us because of free will unless we ask. In every situation, like our government and our personal selves and all that. So,
right,
and they're stopping the nuclear stuff and everything. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if the situation is dire, that's one area where they would not, where they would get involved in our life, even if we don't ask them for help. They are here to step in to make sure the powers that be don't get a little too much power, right?
But, how do you know we didn't ask? We could have asked in our dream world, but we could have asked, we could have set something up before we came here, because we know all the details before we came here, what we were going to do and experience, and then when we came through the birth canal, we forgot. And so now we're remembering. So how do we know that we haven't asked for set up some certain things? Actually, I'm remembering Andrew Bartlett said something about that. We made some kind of contract with, before we came through the birth canal, too, to help us. Even that way. I don't remember.
That's right, but I remember listening to an interview in which a ET contactee who kept in touch with Ashtar Command when he was asked, why would you guys get involved on Earth if the humans don't ask? Don't you need to only get involved if the humans ask you for help? And his answer was, well, yes and no. And he basically said, yeah, we help when we're asked, but if the situation is dire, we'll get involved then. I mean, I guess that this stuff that you're saying about the contract we made, the agreement we made before we were incarnated, born into this reality, that they would help us, one could make the argument that we did ask them for help, even though we didn't ask them for help at the present time, that they agreed to help us when the situation is dire, if that makes sense. But I guess it's one of those point of view type things. But
yeah,
you want to say something?
Yeah, if maybe too, if you have callers, maybe they want to ask questions too. But I'm just going to go a little off track because I heard you on a show one time. It kind of goes with what we're talking about. Do you remember when you're saying about Little Red Riding Hood? Tanaf mentioned Little Red Riding Hood
said that
story?
That was a real story in some other, I think it was a realm that it would have been. I went over her construct of the universe, as she states on her website, and she says that everything that you can imagine happening has to happen because either realms or dimensions. You can find this on her website. She goes into it on the subject. The title of the page is called The Higher Planes, and everything had to exist somewhere. And she talks about how Little Red Riding Hood and some other stories that we think is fictional are real. And the question I have is, the people that created those stories, their imagination came up with that story, but their imagination was somehow connected to the reality that the story did actually happen. And my question is, what caused that place, that reality, that realm, or whatever you want to call it, to implant that guy's imagination in his mind to create that story? Do you know anything about that? And, what was it that you want to talk about in regards to what I said about Little Red Riding Hood and other stories being true?
Yeah, and you also commented, I'll have to ask that question to somebody on one of my guests one of these days. So you just asked me, so I'll offer that. Well, first of all, how did he get that thought or imagine it and creativity? But every word that comes out of our mouth and everybody else's mouth, and is still here. It doesn't leave. It's traveling around in the air, and people can catch those thoughts, collective consciousness or whatever, if you will. In the Bible, it says my word shall not return back void, or whatever. But the other couple thoughts I had, I've heard of people, and this is even in the Christian realm, and other realms, other places too. Man, you can just literally, Andrew, and remember now, we're naturally supernatural. You can literally get to a point in your density, I'll just say, in your body, quantum physics, where you can look at a picture on your wall, Andrew, and enter that picture and go beyond even the story of the picture. It's like a world. You know what I mean? Put that in your pipe and smoke it, Andrew. And then the other thought I thought when you said that, what if this guy that wrote the fairy tale was part of the fairy tale? Like maybe he was the wolf, or the grandma that morphed into the wolf. You know what I mean? Or maybe he or she was Little Red Riding Hood. I don't know. What were you thinking?
What was I thinking? Well, what I was thinking was, what was the thing that happened, or what had to have happened to have caused that guy to think of the story? So there had to be some sort of a transfer between the realm where that story happened and the guy's mind in this reality, which thought of that story, which happened in another realm. I don't know. Maybe this is a question for Andrew Bartzis, but I guess you might as well move on.
You should write him that question,
Right. I did write him a question once, and he did answer on one of his question and answer sessions. I asked him, why is there so much confusion between the Galactic Federation of Light?
Oh, my God. I knew that was your question. I heard that yesterday. I was listening to it. And I literally, they didn't say your name. I said, I wonder if that's Andrew Fisher's question. And oh, my God, you're saying it now.
Yeah,
see,
it was.
Telepathy abounds.
Yeah, so what was the dead giveaway that was my question? Is it because I've discussed on my show before that some people say the Galactic Federation of Light is malevolent council, which masquerades as a benevolent ET council, yet there's a lot of evidence that there is a group called the Galactic Federation of Light, which is strictly benevolent? I mean, did you hear me say that on other shows, and that's where you got the idea that... No.
No,
really?
I haven't heard you say that. It's just, I think the context of how the question was, because this is your personality, Andrew, on the show, and how the question was put, whatever subject, it just I could feel your codes or whatever, your signature code. You know what I mean? When Andrew says it. It wasn't literally the content in the question. It was just how it was put. I said that's what you think of it. Isn't that cool?
Yeah, that same thing happened when I first met Greg at the N5G Return to Atlantis conference. He didn't recognize me when I said, Greg, how you doing, old buddy? And then when I told him who I was, he was like, great to meet you. And then he said, you're a fan of 2012, right? That's my YouTube username. And I told him, well, it was only a matter of time before you figured that one out. And I was like, so how'd you figure it out? And he said, I read my comments. So I don't know what it is that I say and I write, but for some inexplicable reason, it's easy to figure out that it's me. Well,
you know what? This is just a sign of the times. I truly believe it was just, the telepathy that's coming, that we're being turned on to our other gifts, our other skills, our supernatural, natural skills.
Yes. Speaking of supernatural skills being elevated, we do actually have a full moon tonight. I unfortunately won't be able to see it because it's really cloudy up in the suburbs of Philadelphia here. But although totality of the moon was actually a few hours ago, so are you into the moon and everything like that? I believe we talked about it on your show, when I was on a couple of times about how the moon is so obviously an artificial body and how it used to belong to good guy aliens and now it's under the control of bad guy aliens. As someone who takes spirituality very seriously, what do you have to say about the moon?
Okay, well, I know a lot. I've learned a lot. My first thing I learned about the moon was David Icke, and he was talking about how it was metal or something like that. But then I learned something from Andrew Bartzis, how it is like a marker. All moons are like a marker to that was like the edges of the galaxy or the edges of all life. But since then, there's many more universes that have been made. But just recently, I've been listening to David Wilcock on his Guy MTV Wisdom Teachings show. Guy MTV, $10 a month. Andrew, there's all kinds of cool stuff on there, not just what's his name? David Wilcock. But he's talking about, because he hears he's going to start going into all, and you'll love this, Andrew, he's going to start doing some shows on all of his whistleblowers, what they've told him through, which he said he's hardly brought a lot of it forth that we've read. He says the backside of the moon is like, think of it as a huge parking lot for all these ships, good guy ships, brother and sister. So, and then the moon, what I've learned from Andrew and somebody else too, every solstice we have, every solstice starting on 12/21, or was it 12/12, 12/21?
21st, 2012. Yeah, the universal dream time thing, right?
Huh?
Isn't this about the universal dream time? Is that you were going to mention? Isn't that what Andrew said?
It was kind of,
go into that.
Yeah, it was like starting in 12/21, and we know the Mayan calendar. It was like the first click of the clock going into the golden age, and literally, it was like the first click of collective consciousness, which is all of us, not just on Earth, but all other planets, starting to come together in unity, starting to be separated and come together in unity. So 12/21 is the first click. I literally felt awesome joy at a certain moment on that day, and I didn't know about a certain moment then. But then every eclipse and solstice sense is another click into getting closer to unity consciousness, us. And you can look back on yourself, and you can see how you've changed. So that's what I know about that.
Yeah, he did say that the 12/21/2012 solstice, that was the first time we all got a moment to experience universal dream time, where we get to decide whether we want to go into a higher consciousness, or whether we want to remain sheeple, or whether we want to be somewhere in the middle. We weren't consciously aware that was happening, but subconsciously we were entering universal dream time, where we had the ability to decide which path we want to follow. And every solstice, and also, did he say every solstice, or just every solstice, or is it also equinoxes and eclipses and full moons, or what specific astronomical events will that universal dream time happen? Do you remember?
I think solstice and eclipses. And it's been more than one source. Usually I really will know that I know something if I get the same thing from more than 2 or 3 sources. So I've heard that from more than 2 or 3 sources. And then the other thing, let's put the other thing together, Andrew, I know you know about, well, I don't know if you know, but I've just learned recently with Andrew, some of his tapes on the Consciousness Explorer League. I was listening, and I put a YouTube chop on my Diamonds blog. So it's Andrew says there's been 7, God, I don't remember what he called them, 7-something. There's going to be 7-something. There's already been 4 already we went through, but then there's going to be 3 that happen in June. This is like in the spiritual realm, and it's going to could be hard or easy for people, and they're going to come really fast, boom, 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 kind of like earthquakes, consciousness earthquakes, but they're not called that. And so this is where, everybody's going to experience it different. Our consciousness is going to be wide open doing those 3 kind of quake things, consciousness quake. They're called something else. It's on my blog. So we got something to look forward to.
Yes, we do. And since it's May 14th, I should say that in exactly 1 month, June 14th, humanity is going to start shedding its, I don't really know what terminology Andrew Bartz has used, but on the Galactic Historian YouTube channel, which I believe he recently made, he did a series of short interviews, and he said that June 14th is the start of much greater awareness, or much of humanity will realize that they are interconnected. And he talked about how the period June 14th to July 14th, that month period, we shed something like a butterfly shedding a caterpillar shedding a cocoon to become a butterfly. It shedded the skin. We shed something. Maybe you can help me figure out what he was saying. Yeah. And he said that period will increase in more realizing we're all interconnected, which in turn will lead to higher consciousness. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, which is unity consciousness, which are the clicks of the clocks, solstices and eclipses that started on 12/21. And yes, I've heard him on Wolf Spirit Radio and the Galactic History shows. I've listened to them when they were around. And he talks about during the winter, like we hibernate kind of thing. It's kind of like, he describes it as a crab. You know how the crabs have those shells? The crabs, the hard shells. So during the winter, it's like we hibernate. We go into ourselves. We do self-searching, and we meditate, and we help grow ourselves. We love ourselves and nurture ourselves to get ready for the next season, which is like being the butterfly coming out of the what do you call it?
The cocoon.
The cocoon, yes.
Right. So
that's what's going on in June and July is we're shedding our cocoon. We're shedding that crab shell. And, then just imagine a crab shedding the shell and the butterfly coming out of the cocoon. You feel lighter. You feel free. You can fly high, and joy and peace. And we're still in the transitioning. But, yeah. So I'm so curious of how it's all going to transition. The system's crumbling down. Is there going to be a time really fast where there's going to be some big time disclosures? I'm guessing yes, so there will be. Maybe that'll be in June. What do you think, Andrew?
Well, there's a couple of things to interconnect here, and if I may elaborate on this for a couple minutes. Porter Stansberry of Stansberry Research Firm, who has a very accurate track record of making future economic predictions and things with stocks and such that have to do with trends in finance. He talked about how on July 1st of this year, a new law is passed, which is going to involve countries that use the dollar as their reserve currency having to report to the IRS. And Porter, I don't have time to get into this, but Stansberry elaborated how on that could coincide with the collapse of the dollar. This is July 1st we're talking about here. And interestingly, we all know how Andromeda Council contactee Tolek, he kept talking about how January 2014 we will ascend into higher consciousness, we will have crystalline fourth dimensional bodies, and we won't need to use money, won't have to eat to survive, have sex to survive, to reproduce, we don't have to do that, we don't even have to sleep for as long as we do, and more into nature. Well, that did not happen. I mean, planet Earth is in 4D, but the human race is not. And he made a video where he talked about how it has to do with timelines. Timelines are not based on when, because time is an illusion, and they're not based on where either, because space is an illusion. They are based on what, meaning cause and effect. And since those higher ETs who he gets information from have a different sense of time than we do, where like 1 second to us could be 3 months to them. It's really not that intense, that discrepancy. I'm making a much larger than it actually is, but the point is, he said that caused his prediction about January 2014 being wrong, but he did say that his contacts are telling him, we see it happening, it's imminent, you're just not on that timeline, so that's why it didn't happen. I did send Tolek a message saying, hey, may want to check out this video Andrew Bartzis did about how we are going to ascend into higher consciousness, and Tolek's also said how he's gotten a lot of emails from people asking, is the financial collapse of the dollar that's expected to happen going to coincide with higher consciousness? Well, he did say there's going to be a many-year period, like maybe a 10-year period or so, where we would have to change over into different currency, and that goes back to what I said earlier about Sheldon Neidl saying, well, have a gold-backed currency on a global scale. But the point is that if you connect all the dots here, you have to wonder, are all these things that Stansberry with the collapse of the dollar, Bartzis with higher consciousness in June 2014, and Tolek saying, well, my contact's telling me the higher dimensional ascension is imminent. Can you offer any comments or opinions about what you think might be happening and how all these things might be connected?
Wow, that's beautiful. Yes, I do. So as far as Tolek and all that, it did not happen. Well, what I've learned from Franco Di Nicolo, love you, Franco, lately, is, we're each individual consciousness, a snowflake, but together we're so it did not happen because collective consciousness, we were not ready yet as a collective. It did not happen, but it is going to happen. And another reason why collective consciousness, there's I think Andrew said lately, 18% awake right now of the whole.
He did say that.
Population.
I know. That's right.
So, and then what I learned from Franco is, we're already full-pledged into fourth density. But even though we're in fourth density, full-pledged, and we're going to go into fifth density, I think, the beginning of next year, we're waning. Collective consciousness is waning right now, and it did not happen thing, because we're waiting. We're trying to give the people we're in fourth density now, but there's still people in 3D, not all minus 18%, but they're still in 3D, and we're waiting to hopefully they'll come awaken more, so they'll come into 4D and be in their higher vibrations more. Because when we start into 5D and get in to the middle of 5D, from what I remember, it's going to be really, really, really hard for the people that are still in 3D. I mean, literally. I mean, they could commit suicide and all that. We've heard about that, right? So
right.
God consciousness as we are, we're using our love and loving everybody and waiting for the stragglers, so to speak. So this is why we see it didn't happen, I believe, now today. It is. We're just using our love consciousness to help others catch up, so to speak.
Right. Since you mentioned this interview you did with Franco, which interview is this? I'm definitely going to. Is this the most recent one you did with him?
Yeah. Probably yes. Yes.
Okay, I think I want to check that out. I've listened to some of the other ones, but not that specific one. But since you mentioned density and dimension, there seems to be some confusion over whether the terms density and dimension are different or one and the same. If I may elaborate on this for a couple of minutes to describe how all this confusion comes from. First of all, at the N5D City of Angels conference, I asked Bashar, Darryl Anka Bashar, when will we ascend into fourth dimension, where we can have all the great things that Tolek described come with being a fourth dimensional human in his Alfred Weber interview back in 2011. And Bashar said, well, first of all, you're already in the fourth dimension because you're in 3 dimensions of space and 1 dimension of time. You can think of dimensions as a country and densities as individual states within that country. You will move in and out between different densities, but you will remain in physicality for another 1,000 years approximately. And Franco Di Nicola, in his interviews, including the interview I did with him, has suggested there is definitely a difference between density and dimension. And he's talked about how we will be ascended to 5D by 2017, which also ties in with Alfred Weber saying that we will ascend into 5D in 2017. We kind of need a consciousness shift because, among other things, Fukushima is a global extinction event, so we need a consciousness shift to survive that. But since you seem to be very knowledgeable on this, can you maybe clear up the confusion and tell everybody what is the difference between dimension and density, if there is one?
All right, I'll take a stab at it, but just know Franco Di Nicola, he describes all the way from 4th to 9th dimension, I believe, and the detail of what we will look like, our socialism and everything in each dimension as we travel. Earth travels in a different part of the galaxy. And that is on my blog spot, and I think it's on last Saturday's call. I played a lot of other, anyway, so that's a really good one. So to me, as far as I've learned, I thought of this even today, Andrew. I want to make sure that I know. But between density and dimension, to me, density is because we're all energy. So there's different densities we can each be. And depending on the density, from heavy to light, you could be more and more naturally supernatural. I'll just put it that way. And dimensions, dimensions are like different worlds, but like right beside us right now, right beside you right now, you probably have, 3 or 4, probably way more dimensions right beside you on either side, your right or left. There's probably people can see you, you can't see them. But as we change from 3rd density and go higher in density, we are going to start seeing, literally right beside us, the different dimensional worlds. and interacting with the beings in the different dimensional worlds that are just like right in front of our face. See what I mean?
Well, I don't really know if anybody can describe it in a concise way, because like I said, there is a lot of disagreement over whether dimension and density are one and the same or different. Interestingly, though, this ET contactee, I don't remember her name, but she did an interview on Project Camelot, talked about how there are 7 densities, and she thinks of them as being vertically stacked, and she said there's an infinite amount of dimensions that are horizontally, and if entities that are of a higher dimension than, of a higher density than the dimension you are in that are interacting with your life, they have control over you because they are of a higher density. I don't know even where she got the idea that there are 7 densities, and I have heard that from a couple of other sources. I believe David Wilcock did actually talk about how there are 7 densities. Do you have any idea where that 7 density thing comes from?
Well, as far as I know, I don't know. But you know what? It sounds to me like maybe that's as far as we know so far. But, remember, we're limitless, and we're always learning something, and the universes are always changing, so there's probably more every day,
Yeah, and
to me anyway,
let me carry this on a little further. I have heard one source talk about how dimension implies location, and you can understand why the word dimension would imply location. And to take it even further, Alfred Weber talked to me about how the dimension you are in correlates with the extent to which to how much of a service to self or service to others being you are. If you are a service to self entity, then you will be of a low dimension, like below the third dimension that we're in. But if you are a service to others, where you are compassionate and loving and care for others, then you are a higher dimensional being. And when it comes to density, it talks all about how it has to do with your body, its composition, about how we are going to be crystalline beings. Can you offer any comments on that?
Yeah, exactly what I said. Density has to do with your body and how dense you are in your energy in your body, your physicality. And then dimensions, different worlds. And that's how Franco actually, I don't want to say debunked, but he put a different spin on the service to self and service to others. I asked him a question on that phone call you'll listen to. And before he just said interesting when I asked him. And before he even answered nothing, I got his answer. I said, oh, my God, Franco, I already know the answer you're going to say. Hello, we are all one. Service to self, service to others. Well, that we are all one. If we are service to others, even if we're service to self and help ourselves, then we're helping others. So he put a little spin on that. I'm not talking about the ego base. So, yeah, you'd like that call. And mentioning that, I wanted to get back to really quick all the, financial reset stuff and all that, and what may go on in June, middle of June, July. Andrew's talking about, and Franco talks about that too a little bit. I don't know if you've been following it, but the Malaysia 370, it's...
Yes, Andrew Bartis talks about...
We planned for it to come back. It's in a different dimension, or in Hollywood or wherever. And Franco says that too, and we talked about this on our last call. And we literally planned this to help us awaken. A lot of people I see awaken. So I'm curious to see if this is going to happen in June and July too. This Malaysia 370 coming back with everybody alive and tell their story. That'd be cool.
Yeah, there is a video that anybody can watch on the Galactic Historian YouTube channel where Andrew Bartis talked about how the Malaysian plane created a paradox when it went into another dimension and is there. The people are not dead. They still have the ability to come back in this reality as humans, but they're just trapped in another dimension. With that being said, since I mentioned paradox, I've heard Andrew Bartis talk about paradoxes a lot. Everybody knows what a paradox is. I would think it's a contradiction that is actually true, even though it appears to be a contradiction. But how does that factor into the word paradox in the sense that Andrew Bartis uses it? Do you know anything about that?
The word paradox you're talking about?
Yeah.
Or with paradox, I don't think everybody knows, Andrew. That's a hard word. That was a hard word for me to understand. I still totally don't understand it.
Neither do
but,
I.
You know, yeah. But it's kind of like a conundrum. Yeah. But it's okay. Yeah. I'll think of an example in a minute. But what I think about what you said, Andrew said about Malaysia, I was so happy when I heard that part, too. So now that I know Cynthia Ross, there's all kinds of Cynthia. There was Hollow Earth. There was Franco Di Nicolo. There was Andrew Bartzitz. Said exactly the dimension story. But then there's others like Frank, the Webb one, and what's his name? Somebody Webb.
I'm not
you had
sure.
Him on,
Alfred
Webb.
Alfred Weber.
Alfred Weber and all the other stuff talk about the bad weapons that we've had and all that, kind of another spin on the Malaysia 370. You know what I think, Andrew? I think it all goes together. All the pieces, put them together, and we're going to see that once Malaysia returns. I believe, because Franco kind of hinted, but he didn't say nothing, and I'm just spinning it myself now. I think something really, really bad, they're going to plan on doing something really bad, like a 9/11 or worse, but it got intercepted, kind of like a nuclear weapon, just say up to the, how they're protecting us and not nukes going off. Well, this is similar to maybe a nuclear weapon, and they weren't going to let it happen, so they protected us. Like, who was it that said this? Red Ice Radio, David Mortensen. He said, was it David or somebody else, that these 10 men or whoever, they were going to go and, it's a long story, but they were going to give some secrets away and some keys to some countries that could do us, to put the Big Brother plan enactment into place. And Big Brother are planning to kill almost the whole population of planet Earth. Ain't going to happen. So when this all comes about, I preface to say all of these stories we've been hearing are all pieces of the puzzle of Malaysia 370.
I'm sure they are at some level. By the way, I see there's a call in the chat room. Don't know if it's someone just listening. Hope it's not, because I need to get a few callers every so often. Calls don't really work too well on this show because really dedicated to exposing the nature of reality. Doesn't really offer much time for calls. But, hey, if anybody wants to call in, I'll happily take you. Area code 978, you are on the... Oh, they hung up on me as soon as I hooked them on the air. That's kind of disappointing. All right, whatever. Maybe they'll call in. If they do, I'll let them on the air again. If they don't want to talk, that's they don't have to say anything. But moving on, what can we discuss?
Okay.
Yeah, well, in regards to crystalline bodies, there seems to be a lot of controversy around this. I mean, Bashar, when I spoke to him, he talked about how we will remain in physicality for another 1,000 years, but he didn't really elaborate on what physicality means, and that somewhat seems to contradict what Andromeda Council contactee Tolek is saying about how his ET contacts are telling him that we here in this reality, in this dimension here on planet Earth, on this timeline, will ascend into a more crystalline body structure. From what you've heard from all the people that you've interviewed, what do you have to say about this contradiction in regards to whether or not we will soon have crystalline bodies or not?
Well, that goes with the diamonds thing. Diamonds, the crystalline bodies. Yeah, I believe we will, and that's part of our DNA. We're 12-stranded DNA we have, and it's turning on as we speak. So that's our crystalline bodies when it's all turned on.
Yeah, but when will that happen? Why? Do you have any idea why?
It's happening now.
It is happening now.
Yeah, for many of my callers, I've asked that question, and they've all answered, it's happening now. It's a process. We're doing, and even David Wilcock has changed his mind somewhat. He said recently that, he thought it was a click of a moment, which it will be eventually, a light switch turning on at that big changeover moment when we finally have the build-up, when our last strand of DNA is turned on. Boom, the light switch goes on. Franco, I got him to say that last week. But it's a process that's going on now. This is why, and you can measure it by your opening up and awakening and changing. Each person personally can do that. And then you can see in yourself, you can see it in groups, and you can see it in governments and education and all that, if you look deeply. Do you think?
Oh, yes, definitely. Something just occurred to me that I'd like to discuss because there's this problem I've had, and I want to know maybe if you've had the same problem and what can we do about it. I've often tried to combine the work of the conspiracy and patriot community with the work of the spirituality and metaphysics community. Problem is, when you try to put spiritual consciousness, metaphysical stuff in with conspiracy and patriot movements, they will often say, this is too confusing for us, we don't understand any of this stuff. On the other hand, if you put patriot and conspiracy material in a spirituality group or setting, the people will say, could you please not talk about this stuff? You're making us feel uncomfortable. We've all gotten past this point. And a couple of times during some conferences, I'm not going to name any names here, but I've tried to give out that video called Secrets Police Don't Want You to Know, which can be seen on the Alex Jones channel, out to people, which holds the key to keeping billions of dollars in stolen revenue out of the hands of the corrupt cops and tyrants in government and New World Order. And during those metaphysical conferences I've been at, the people said, could you please not give that out to people? You're making everybody feel uncomfortable because you're talking about the police. And I'm thinking, oh, give me a break. I mean, this video is totally worth getting out to people. And a couple times I've heard radio show hosts who are very spiritual, whenever people start talking about things like conspiracy theories and stuff that could be considered fear-mongering, they say, could you please not talk about this? You're making us feel uncomfortable. Well, I don't ever get uncomfortable when people talk about this stuff, and I think it may not be too much of a stretch to say that all these people who say they're getting uncomfortable when they hear this stuff, whenever they let themselves get uncomfortable when they hear this, they are lowering their consciousness. They are keeping themselves from ascending, because if you want to ascend, then you should not be hurt or feel uncomfortable if that stuff is brought up in conversation. So do you know people who have this problem? And if so, would you agree or disagree with me that they got to get over this because they're not going to be able to ascend if they let this kind of stuff get to them and make them feel uncomfortable?
Wow, Andrew. Well, all I can say is we did it again. I had a little note to bring this subject up. And then you asked the question. I was like, how can I sneak this in there? But you asked the question. You read my mind, Andrew,
wow.
Believe it or not. Yeah. So, first of all, I want to say it's beautiful what you're doing, and your concept is awesome, and it's right on track. But then I wrote this note because I heard it from David Wilcox, and I thought of you, and I said, I got to let Andrew know this just to bring it forth, see what he thinks. Because I know your heart, and you're frustrated now. But you know, what he said is one of the things for loving others or whatever, and the free will. He was talking about the free will society and how ETs can't help us without asking help, and how we should love everybody, free will, right? Is to only give 10% of what you know to anybody, new in this. You know what I mean?
10%.
So what I was thinking for you, maybe you could somehow, what you want to do. So take something that you're spurred in your heart to bring to the Patriots, give them a little bait, give them like 10% of what you know. Maybe do a tube chop of like 1 or 2 minute, like Andrew says, so a 1 and 2 minute tube chop, and I know how to do that, of your video that you want, the police video, just say, and put it on your Patriot. That's like 10%. And then just wait. If they ask you more questions, then there you go. You can give them a little bit more, 10%, right? Because David describes if you give it to them all at once, and it's like really shocking to them. Think back when you were first awakening. Really shocking to them, and they like get scared and fear and uncomfortable. You use that word because they feel uncomfortable. You're giving it to them. Then they're just going to make up excuses because of their fear and walk the other way. But if you give them 10% or 5% of what you know, then they will say, oh, yeah, that's right, wow. And then they start asking questions on Facebook. They'll, comment or whatever. Because David told a story when he went to the mountains of Canada, and some man, they were talking just nonchalantly, and then this man asked him what you do, and he just told him like a little bit of what he did, and the guy kept asking him questions. And then the group gathered that this man was waiting for, and David ended up talking to all of them. He was just giving them little bits here because they kept asking questions. And by the time they're all done, he had shared with them everything he knows. See what I'm saying? Now that's a cool strategy, huh? Try that one.
I suppose it's worthwhile, but there are other times where even if you give just 10%, people are going to give you grief about it. Case in point, as I discussed with Andrew Bashago a couple weeks ago when he was on my show, U.S. government knew 9/11 was going to happen all the way back in 1971 because they used their time travel technology to look into the future to see it. And that gave them the ability to manipulate the timeline leading up to 9/11, so 9/11 would happen according to the way they wanted it. Of course, it didn't work out too well for them because, as Andrew Bartz has explained, 9/11 was a timeline incursion. As many good and bad timelines were going together in a war, and all the good timelines, the benevolent timelines, managed to make 9/11 appear to be so obviously staged, well, obvious anyway to people who are not sheeple, and that's why even though they had the ability to manipulate 9/11 happening for 30 years, it still didn't work out too well because it was so obviously staged. But the problem with this is Andrew Bashago talks about how he can't talk about this openly in the 9/11 Truth Movement. They've even gone as far as calling him a kook, as paradoxical and ironic as that may sound, that 9/11 Truth would call someone a kook. But you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out that the reason they don't want him talking about it is because they have a fear of what other people think, which is the worst prison anyone could be in, as David Icke and others have explained forever. And I myself got banned off the 9/11 Truth Movement's most popular Facebook group because I posted my interview with Alfred Weber, and on the link where the post where I put the link to the video, I talked about the specific stuff about 9/11 we covered, including the time travel stuff, the thing about how the planes were holograms, the timeline incursion thing, and the next thing I knew, I get banned from that group. And the problem with this is the paradox here: the fear of what other people think is the worst fear anyone could be in, and it's only going to hinder your ability to get the truth out. But yet so many truth movements, in particular 9/11, assert you should care what other people think, because if you don't, you're not going to get your word out. Well, my counter-argument to that is if you give those Illuminati suckers all kinds of discrediting ammunition to fight you with, then karma's going to come back to haunt them. George Cavazos made that very clear to me when I interviewed him way back in the day on one of my first shows, where he said he's going to continue to talk about how he originally predicted that on December 21st, 2012, Mother Earth would shed her skin, and then on the 31st of March 2013, we would ascend into 5D Earth that day. Well, that did not happen because we were never on that timeline, but he said he still wants to talk about it because it will give those suckers in the Illuminati so much ammunition to fight him with, which will bring them out in the open, which will cause karma to eventually come back to haunt them, which in turn will lead to higher consciousness for all. I tried to explain that on my post on the 9/11 Facebook group page, and I said, if they try to discredit us, karma will come back to haunt them. Well, it didn't work because they banned me anyway. So have you had this problem in your life? And if you have, how do you recommend we go about dealing with it?
Well, again, now I feel like a Franco question. Let me ask you a question, and I ask myself this too many a times, because there's times on my blog or in the call, my own call, and, your own call, and I heard you can do what you want on your call and say what you want. You can put on the fire on your call, right? And I can too. But then there's other times we want to do the 10 or 5% thing. Because let me ask you this question. Let me ask this question. So when you post on the Patriot site, right?
Right.
And you told me your vision and your strategy, why. Answer this question for yourself. What is your intent when you're posting on the Patriot site? What is your intent? Why are you doing that?
To wake people up. Simple as that.
Okay. So you're seeing now the results, and I've done this too. We're seeing the results of they're not waking up. They're just pushing you away and saying, get out of here, you crazy nut. I'm not even going to venture into this. So now you got to sit back and think, okay, now my real intention is to wake somebody up, at least get somebody curious, right? So this is why I'm for myself even, and I'm taking Andrew Okay, take that police video that you want, or the 9/11, right? And you listen to a lot of radio channels. So find tube chop, do a tube chop, a 2-minute tube chop that will get those patriots' attention. You know, maybe not a really hardcore one, but that will at least perk them up a little and think, what? Wow. You know what I mean? You can do the tube chop, and then you can put the whole link right beside the tube chop. So if they're really interested, then they'll go to the whole show and listen to the whole show. So I mean, or even you don't, the video thing or because your intent is awaken somebody up, right?
Right.
So you're seeing that you're pushing them away, and that hurts your heart. It hurts both of you. It hurts them because they run away and you know they need to awaken. It hurts you because you feel rejected, and I don't blame you because your heart is saying, I want to wake these guys up. So now, try a different strategy. See what I'm saying? Just always think of that question, why am I doing this? Okay, and then ask yourself, what is the best way to, it's not working this way, is there any other way I can do it, to try it? So experiment with it. Because I believe, and I do the same thing with the news, your heart's in the right place, and I love the strategy with the Patriot thing, and that's hardcore, man. That's hard to break through, but you're going to break through. So just readjust your strategy. And listen, that's another good question to ask Mr. Andrew Bartitz. Ask him. You're in the Consciousness Explorer Group League. Let's ask him that question. That's an excellent question to ask him.
Yeah, I suppose so. All right, thanks for covering that. Yeah, want to say something?
Oh, and by the way, like 2 minutes before you end, I wanted to give a blessing to everybody. It'll take me like 2 minutes, just so you know if that's okay.
Go right ahead. We'll do it now, and then I'll get on to what I wanted to ask you. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I want to do it at the very end before you close your show. If that's,
all right. I'll keep an opening then for you. No problem.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
One thing I want to talk about, which I've heard you mention, I believe we talked about this when I was on your show, the whole thing about Drunvalo Melchizedek saying something about the creation of the universe. If maybe you know what it is that I'm talking about, Melchizedek said something about how this universe came to be, or maybe I'm confusing it with something else. Do you know what I'm talking about? And if you do, can you please elaborate on that?
Okay, say again. Drunvalo Melchizedek.
Drunvalo Melchizedek talking about how this universe was created. There was some special thing that happened. Do you have any idea what I'm talking about here?
Well, I remember learning, Andrew, I just listened to it again yesterday. This universe is, what does he say, Andrew? Every planet in this universe, and by the way, there's not 12 planets, there's 66, according to Andrew Bartitz.
Right.
In this universe is going through something, and I can't remember what it is. Oh gosh. Oh my God, I can't think of the words, but basically every planet is awakening in this universe. Do you remember, you know what I'm saying, Andrew?
Yeah, but maybe it wasn't Drunvalo Melchizedek. It was, because the word Melchizedek is not just correlated with Drunvalo, and there was something he said about the universe being created. Like maybe there was different universes, and I don't know. It's a shame we don't remember what that was all about. I thought it would make a great topic to bring up in conversation. But on a related note, there's universes being created every day, new universes, thousands of them. Remember, limitless. It's very hard to put your mind around, right? We're not limited beings. The universe is everything living, that includes everything, is limitless. If you could put your mind around that, put it in a nutshell. Oh, yeah,
I do know our skin suits are very special. Us, humanity here on Earth, this planet Earth, our skin suits are very, very special. Because there's mixed DNA of different races, and they did that. And but anyway, our skin suits are like keys to a whole of, and keys to get into different dimensions and planets. And we can, once our process of awakening and ascension is done, we can go to many, many thousands and thousands of planets and dimensions, whereas other beings don't have quite that availability to go to. With our skin suits, even, with our whole body. Go ahead.
Yeah, that brings something else up. This whole thing about synthetic Merkaba around the body. Have you looked into that and how a Merkaba vessel can be put around the body to help us get from point A to point B in the cosmos? Are you familiar with that subject matter?
Merkaba, I think that's part of our energy body as we grow in density. And so we can there's many ways that I'm finding that we can get around, not just one. Remember, limitless again. So there's even probably more than we even know. There's transportation in the car or whatever. There's translocation, where you're in your house one minute, the next minute you can be in Africa, materialized, like on Star Trek. There's bilocation, you can be in two places at once. There is you can go places in an ET ship, and the ship is a living being who decided they wanted to be that ship to experience that, just like planet Earth and other planets were living beings. They're still living beings, but they like human at one time, and they've grown. And then and we're multidimensional beings. We're thousands of places right now. We just don't know it.
Yeah, why don't you talk about that, since you are familiar with that subject, about how we have higher versions of ourselves and higher dimensions, and probably higher densities as well, if you believe that densities and dimensions are different things. Since you mentioned that, can you elaborate on that subject about how we have higher versions of ourselves and other dimensions and densities?
Oh, we're bringing that all out. That's a really hard subject to get our little mind around the way it is right now. But I've grown. I've been struggling through that years, but I've grown through that. So I think we're multidimensional beings. There's many of us on different planets, and there may be many Elizabeth Diamond, thousands of me on planet Earth, thousands of Andrews. I mean, that's funny to think of, right, Andrew? But where we're at now on Earth in the propaganda, just say prison planet, whatever, in the oppression machine, which we're coming out of, we were separated from our multidimensionality, from even know that we're multidimensional beings. There's people even in the Christian realm that, now they describe it, and not even just in the Christian realm, others I heard describe, they can experience three of themselves at the same time, what they're doing, different places. That's mind-boggling, isn't it? It's mind-boggling to us right now because our DNA is only turned on 3 strands. There are probably more now versus 12. What do you think about that one, Andrew?
Well, that brings up an interesting subject of whether or not it's in our best interest to study quantum physics, because some people have asserted that you shouldn't spend a lot of time studying quantum physics because quantum physics is the way of describing how this dimension, this reality works. And if you spend a lot of time studying how this reality works, then it will keep you from being able to ascend into higher dimensions simply because you're obsessing so much about this dimension. I asked this very question to Teal Scott at the N5D Return to Atlantis conference, and she said, she basically, in a nutshell, she gave me a really long answer, but she basically said, if you believe you're not going to ascend if you study quantum physics, then don't expect to ascend, but it shouldn't hinder your ability to ascend just because you want to seek information to learn about how reality works. So now that I've brought this up, do you agree or disagree with the idea that studying quantum physics will keep your consciousness from ascending?
Well, I agree and I disagree. Like I said, we both we are all going through this with different unique experiences in our lives to awaken us, right?
Right.
So I have gotten into the studying the quantum physics, not like on my own. I'm learning quantum physics from people like David Wilcock and all that, just the basic concept of quantum physics. And I can tell you from my experience of learning the basic concept of quantum physics and science, not just quantum physics science, it's helped me to understand and have the knowledge and then the wisdom of who we really are. I mean, see, David just said this just recently, that when we get to a point in this world and on Earth where spirituality and science can mesh together again, because it was never supposed to be separate in the first place, then that's when we will really wake up, you know what I mean?
Right.
So, and then on the other side, what Teal said, You don't necessarily need to have quantum physics. Maybe you'll go the other route. Maybe you'll go the route where you meditate, and you go out of your body every day and you go to different dimensions or different worlds. And a being on that world teaches you, just you ask the question and boom, it's in your head, the whole quantum physics concepts, and then you understand, or the whole understanding of how you are spiritual and who you are in a moment's time, and that's how you learn it. See? So that's why I say agree and disagree. But I went the quantum physics route too, you know. So it's good to learn a little bit about that because it helps you understand, especially been brainwashed so much that we're not supernatural and you know, that we're like just this human in this body, you know, that has to have money to get stuff.
Yes.
But that's a lie from pit of hell.
Yeah, and of course the documentary "What the Bleep Do We Know" is arguably one of the best wake-up calls the human race could have ever come up with in regards to understanding how quantum physics is where the rubber meets the road in regards to expanding consciousness from this reality into a higher dimensional reality. But speaking of expanding consciousness, I think we should talk about meditation for a little bit. Meditation can be harmful if you turn it into a ritual, as some people say. But I guess I might as well ask you about that. Can you think of how meditation can become harmful if you turn it into a ritual? And as someone who takes spirituality very seriously, what kind of meditations do you think are the best ones to do for people to follow?
Well, can become harmful. That's kind of hard for me to say because, you know, I'm on the positive realm. But what I think with that, anything can become harmful if it's unbalanced. It's called addiction, right? Addiction.
Right.
So just keep it balanced because, yeah. And we can literally meditate while we're doing something, washing the dishes, when you're imagining that you're imagining that your car has no rust and it has nothing wrong with it. Right? Well, that's actually creating, and that's meditating too.
Yeah, if you believe it, then it might. That if you believe it, it will come. Because your thoughts can manifest. It's what the documentary "The Secret" is all about. But in regards to yeah, keep going.
So for me, meditating, you know, I come from the Christian realm, and it's hard to sit there like forever, quiet your mind. But you got to practice to quiet your mind, get all that stuff out, all those little talking in your mind all the time, right? That's right. What they've programmed us with. So you got to get to that point. But literally, it's the picture. What I've learned about meditation in a nutshell, a picture of what it really is like if you want to learn something about something, or you want to get. Because God is everything. We are God. Everything's living and everything is God, source. Like so, you know, like the cows and the sheep, because they call us sheep, all right. Well, us sheep know what to do. Then we know how to meditate. They sit and they eat the grass and they lay down and they keep chewing on the cud. They chew it. They chew it for a long time. Chew it. So that's what we can do to meditate, for example. Like you want to, I don't know. Okay, Andrew, so, what is a good strategy I can use on these Patriots to help awaken them? And you just, you can say that out loud. You can ask that question out loud. You're asking yourself, your higher self. You're asking God's source. You're asking your ancestors, the beings that are around you in the many different dimensions that you don't see right now. You're asking them out loud. You can ask that question out loud several times. And then you can just, even as you're mowing the lawn, you can keep asking that question in your mind. And I'll tell you what. And then, you know, there's a time then after you're done asking that question for a while out loud and then in your mind, and you just let it go and let it be silent inside yourself. And I'm telling you, those revelations will flow. That you keep chewing on the cud, you keep chewing, you keep thinking about it, keep asking, and you're chewing on that cud. Oh, my God, the answers come, you know, the meditation or you know, the being comes and you engage with your brother or sister. So
yes.
To me, that...
Oh, I want to cover a couple of other things I want to cover before we get to your whatever it is that you say you wanted to do. But one thing I want to couple of debates that I've heard. Maybe you can give your take on this. Whether or not it makes sense to call yourself a sovereign. Now, one could say, well, you are infinite consciousness, therefore you are the creator, because the reality is holographic. Space and time are illusions. Every small part of the hologram is a representation of the greater whole. Anybody who knows what the Mandelbrot set is could tell you that. And this says, well, if you are the creator, if you are infinite consciousness, well, then you are a sovereign. However, there are people that would say, no, the word sovereign is not appropriate, because if you are a sovereign, you can rule over others, and you can't call yourself a sovereign because only the highest source has authority to call yourself a sovereign. Well, the conflict there is that one group says that, well, yeah, you are infinite, but you should acknowledge that there is a matrix that's an illusion that we're living in, so you shouldn't say you're sovereign. But other people say, no, we're all one. Just think of it as we're all one. You should definitely say you're a sovereign because we're all just one consciousness. So, knowing how this debate goes, do you agree or disagree with the notion that people should refer to themselves as sovereign?
Well, give me a quick description of how you're describing a description of sovereign today.
Well, well, we all know like a king is a male sovereign. A king is, and the idea is he can reign over other people. That's why the word reign, R-E-I-G-N, is at the end of sovereign. I'm not exactly sure of the etymology of where the first part comes from, but the idea he can rule over others, he can control over others, and one would say, well, only the creator can rule over others, the highest source that is. So that's why the highest source, specifically the only thing, it can be called a sovereign, and all the smaller parts of the hologram that manifest from source, they should not refer to themselves as sovereign for that reason, because sovereign can rule over others and have control over others, and you shouldn't be a service to self entity who does not care about others. That would make you a sovereign, and that's why they claim that saying that being a sovereign is wrong. Do you agree or disagree with that notion?
So you're saying your description of the sovereign, as you're describing it today, is a king, like a king that rules over people.
Yeah, one who controls others and imposes.
And so all the different groups are saying different things of what they believe a sovereign is. I think it comes down to, let's go down to the root, the foundation of something, and that's language, our language, sovereign. Every group may be saying something different because in their mind they're thinking what their description of sovereign is. Their description of what is the word I want to use? In a dictionary, the meaning of sovereignty. They all have different meaning what sovereignty is, and maybe that's where everybody's saying something different. But to me, sovereignty is being free. And we are free. We just don't know it yet. And we're here on this earth and we're oppressed, but even in the midst of the oppression, we can be free. You just declare yourself. When you know and you have the wisdom of that and the understanding of that, you can declare yourself to be free. Like, for instance, i.e., Andrew Bart's declarations, revocations. Saying, I know about you. Now I don't need to engage with you, and you declare it with your words and mouth. And then you're free. You're sovereign. That's my description.
Yeah, I read those Andrew Bart's soul contract revocation things on a couple of occasions. Both times I actually did it after I had spent about 40 minutes sun gazing, so it felt really, really good when I did it. How many times have you read those contract revocations? Oh,
I read them like a year and a half ago. Probably 3 or 4 or 5 times.
How could you have read them over a year and a half ago? Didn't he just upload them to the site like a couple months ago, or did he already have them out in the open?
No, he had them since the beginning of the first Walking in Energy show. Remember the first famous 1, 2, 3 Walking in Energy shows with Chris Ailes? And then right after that was Julian Wells. And I've stumbled on Andrew. I've been following Andrew from the very first second I heard him on radio, which was 10-minute spot on the OPPT call with Chris Ailes brought him. Well, I guess he was doing Wolf Spirit Radio, that radio show. I didn't know of him then, although I listened to many of them. Yeah, so they've been around for a while. So
all right.
The thing with, they're on my blog, and I recently blogged them. The thing with those, when you're awakening and you're awakened and you understand, that you are in a propaganda world and you have some knowledge of it, then that's where you can really read those and declare yourself out of that with your heart and your passion. You know what I mean?
Yes. Speaking of your heart, there is also a debate. I guess I might as well ask you about this. Some people say that you might as well just keep using your heart chakra. Don't bother using any other chakras. The heart is where it's at. You can't go wrong if you just keep using the heart. I mean, that's basically what George Kavassilas has asserted that a few times, but other people would assert, no, you got it all wrong, man. You're missing out on all the fun. You shouldn't just restrict it to one chakra. Yeah, don't bother using the argument you can't go wrong if you always use the heart, because that's a lame excuse to get out of all the other fun things you could be doing by using other chakras. I mean, in his book, The Perception Deception, David Icke, which I'm reading right now, by the way, talked about how after the fall of Atlantis, the powers that be who assisted in creating the fall of Atlantis moved us from a heart chakra-based system into a solar plexus chakra-based system, which is the chakra right below the heart. But some would assert, well, even the solar plexus chakra has beneficial qualities, so that doesn't mean you shouldn't use it. So now that I've brought up this debate here, do you agree or disagree with the notion that you should always use the heart, even if you have other chakras to utilize?
I agree. The heart is very important to use, but I agree all of the chakras. Why would we have them if we don't need to use them or could use them? Do you want to be 10% of you, or do you want to be 100% of you? Do you want to be the acceptable of you, or do you want to be the good of you, or do you want to be the perfect you? 100% of you. I don't want to be the perfect me. I want to use all of me. I'll put it that way. But in this, the heart versus the mind, whatever, it's just all a balance too. Everything.
Yeah, it's a balance. Just be careful with that phrase. When you talk about government saying we need to have a balance between liberty and security, that translated into English, that's we don't give a shit about your liberty or security. We're going to brainwash you into giving up your rights, and we're going to do it under the illusion we're going to keep you safe. Now, that's a situation where it's going to come back to haunt you if you believe that that's an actual drawing of balance. But in the situation you described it's a completely different matter. We have we have 6 minutes left, because in the last 2 minutes I'm going to I'll let you off the air just so I can prepare for the other show. How long is this thing you wanted to do in regards to whatever it is you were planning to do for like a couple minutes?
Oh, probably 2 minutes or so. So we can time for another question or so. Yeah, I just want to bless everybody, and I don't know. I'm just calling it a blessing of what I say all the time, of love, peace, and joy turning to bliss. Yes.
Bliss. How do you define the word bliss, by the way? Because I've heard the phrase ignorance is bliss, and I don't really know if I know what that expression means. Maybe I'll know what it means if you can define the word bliss for me.
Ask your higher self to help you experience bliss. Ask your higher self to experience joy going into bliss. Bliss just means to me that you're a butterfly. There's no worries in the world. You're free. And you feel happy and joy in your heart and peace, and you love everybody and everything. And you're one with everything and everybody and every living thing. And that's what we're doing, right? We were unity conscious. We're coming out of separation back into unity consciousness.
Right,
so
I believe
bliss is the ultimate. So from love, I don't know if I want love, peace, joy. It's kind of like a transition, right? Love, peace, joy into bliss. The bliss is the ultimate. That's kind of describing our transition into the golden age.
Yeah, although I think I should point out that I heard somewhere that expression I said, ignorance is bliss, that has to do with the fact that the doctor who treated President James Garfield after he was shot, his name was Bliss. His last name was Bliss, and that expression came from that. Of course, James Garfield was murdered by the bankers. So were Lincoln, Kennedy, and McKinley. President McKinley, there was also a direct connection there with the bankers playing a role in his presidential assassination. But I guess.
And to me, there's no way we're going to end this time of not finding all of that out. We're not just going to go into the golden age and be happy-go-lucky. We got to have disclosure. We got to find out what all we've been living in. That's part of the transition. So I believe all of that's coming soon, hopefully, right?
Yeah, I believe it too. All right, so there's 5 minutes, 20 seconds left on the clock, so I guess I'll let you do whatever it is that you wanted to do for a couple minutes. Please, let's make the most of this. Go right ahead, Elizabeth.
Okay, so let me just 5 minutes. Okay, I won't be long. So lately, I'm just going to bless you with blessings of love, peace, joy, turning to bliss. And lately, it just sounded like Native American, but I'm just going to sing a little bit to you.
Go ahead.
So open up your heart and all your chakras. Oh, Yalamakoye Yana He Yala Ha Ya Mayuli Alalani Kiana Shadabagia La Loba Okayama Mayana Ya Alamoko ye la la loli, alalala moshiriana, iana yu, hamagia la 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 mo, iliana niana ye, umaki, anani, ulamoa. Anamoshilana Omagia lobo ye la lolo iao Amwali. Take it away, Andrew. Thank you.
Well, that was wonderful. Which Indian tribe was that, or do you not know?
I don't know. I just know it's a blessing of peace, love, and joy, and enjoy it. Maybe you get so giddy, Andrew, you can't stop laughing, and you don't even know what you're laughing about. Let me know when that happens, huh?
Right. So you don't know what Indian tribe that was. Well, whatever Indian tribe it was, I'm sure they're very, very spiritual, because that was a wonderful chant. So I guess since the show has come to an end, I'll tell you the same thing I tell all my guests. Elizabeth, you may not have a household name by any stretch of the imagination, even though you have your own radio show, but you are a fascinating individual nonetheless to listen to. However, one of my goals on this show is to try to get as many different people on the show as possible before I start giving any one specific guest double dips. So as much as I'd love to have you on again, I don't think you should expect another call from me to come on, because there are lots of other fascinating individuals who deserve some glory on my show, and that's the way I want to try to do it, get as many different people on as possible. So, if you ever find something really crucial or important that you want to talk about, I might be able to do a 1-hour special show with you on a non-Wednesday date like I did with Jason Martell and his colleague with my two shows ago. But other than that, it's always going to be different guests on this show, because there's a lot of people who get information.
Andrew, you're beautiful. Thank you so much. I don't want to double dip you, and I'm perfectly happy with this show. It's beautiful. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you.
And
thank
your show's beautiful,
show.
too. I'll definitely listen to the Franco Di Nicola most recent interview, because you hinted there's some very important things that were discussed there that we should listen to. So I'll definitely tune into that on the archives as soon as I save the show to my computer. All right, take care, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
Pleasure having you on.
Namaste.
Namaste. Well, folks, I do hope you learned something from that. I certainly did. And next week, the 21st, I will be, as I said earlier, I'll be having Catherine Albrecht on. She has got her own radio show, substituted on the Alex Jones show a couple times. She did, and has appeared on that show as well a few times. And we're going to talk about Big Brother, the surveillance state, tyranny in general. She also appeared on the Big Brother episode of Conspiracy Theory with Jesse Ventura. She's done a lot to fight for people's rights, and she's also, I believe, one of the co-creators of the search engine startpage.com, which does not monitor your IP address. It uses the same function as Google does to search for things in regards to search results, but it's not connected to the NSA in any way. And she also said she wanted to create a mail system for Startpage. Definitely want to create an account when that happens. So we'll have Catherine Albrecht on talking about tyranny and the surveillance state and Big Brother in general, and that's next week. So without further ado, namaste, everybody. Enjoy your full moon Wednesday.